It was a gray Thursday afternoon in April of 2006, the kind of cold that crept into your bones even though spring was supposed to have arrived in Manchester, New Hampshire. The wind pushed through the narrow streets like it had something to prove. Emily Thompson stood outside St. Mary's Family Medical Clinic, her arms wrapped tightly around her plus-size jacket, waiting for her husband to come pick her up, just like he always did after her appointments. Except today was different. Emily, at 365 pounds, had just finished another humiliating checkup. Her doctor, Dr. Alan Thompson, her own husband of 11 years, had barely looked at her. He tapped on his clipboard like he was bored, then gave her a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've gained another 8 pounds, Em," he said. "I can't keep covering for your bad choices. You need to try harder." Emily blinked at him. "Alan, I've been trying. I've cut out soda, and I started walking." He raised a hand. "Emily, please, just don't. I've got real patients to see." Real patients. The words stung like salt in an open wound. She walked out of the office trying to keep her chin up, but there was no car waiting at the curb. She checked her flip phone. No messages. No missed calls. She stood there for 45 minutes until a nurse from the front desk stepped out. "You okay, hon? Need me to call someone?" Emily smiled politely, hiding the crack in her chest. "No, I'm fine. He's just running late." But deep down, she knew. She knew he wasn't coming. That night, Alan finally walked through the door at nearly 11. He didn't say a word, just dropped his keys on the counter and started packing a small bag. "Where are you going?" Emily asked, her voice already trembling. He didn't look at her. "I've been seeing someone. Her name's Kelsey. She's a nurse at the clinic. She's younger in shape. She fits my life now." Emily's breath caught. "Your life?" "You've let yourself go," he said coldly. "You're not the woman I married. You don't care about your health, about your appearance. It's embarrassing. I can't pretend anymore." She stood frozen in the middle of their tiny kitchen, the same one where they'd once talked about growing old together. Now, he walked out like she was nothing. No goodbye, no apology, just gone. In that single night, Emily's world collapsed. The man she trusted with her body, her dreams, her future, he discarded her like yesterday's newspaper. No warning, no dignity, just shame. For weeks, Emily barely spoke. She ate whatever was left in the fridge, leftover meatloaf, frozen mac and cheese, anything to fill the void. But it didn't help. Not really. People in town started whispering. The girl at the grocery store didn't even try to hide her smirk when Emily walked past with her cart full of frozen dinners. "That's her," someone whispered once behind her. "The fat one he dumped for the hot nurse." The humiliation was everywhere, in the stares, the silence, the cruel glances. The weight wasn't just on her body. It was in every room she entered. It sat heavy in her chest. And worst of all, she started to believe them. Maybe she was worthless. Maybe all she'd ever be was the big wife he left. But on a rainy morning in June, something shifted. Emily woke up from a dream. She was standing on a stage, people clapping, lights shining, and she was strong, slim, radiant. She didn't recognize that version of herself, but she wanted to. And for the first time in months, she asked herself a new question. What if this pain was the beginning, not the end? What if she took every drop of shame and used it as fuel, not for revenge, not for attention, but for herself, to rebuild her self-worth, to create prosperity on her own terms, to heal, to be seen? That question lit something in her chest that couldn't be put out. Not by anyone, not even Alan. The next morning, Emily stood barefoot in her tiny kitchen, staring at a cracked mug that said, "Best wife ever." The words mocked her. The sink was piled high with dishes. The air smelled like microwave dinners and stale regret. But today, something was different. She took that mug and dropped it into the trash. No ceremony. Just silence. Then she pulled open the fridge and tossed out the leftover pizza, the sodas, the frozen burritos. One by one. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were dry. "I don't want to feel like this anymore," she whispered. By the end of that week, she'd walked 1 mile each day, around the block, breathing in the cold New Hampshire air like it was medicine. Her knees hurt, her back ached, but the pain made her feel alive. It reminded her she hadn't given up yet. The people in her neighborhood noticed. Some waved, some didn't. One woman, a thin brunette who worked at the bank, stopped her near the gas station. "Emily, right?" she said with a forced smile. "Didn't your husband used to be that doctor on Hanover Street? I saw he's dating Kelsey now. So crazy, huh?" Emily just nodded. "Yeah, life's funny that way." Inside, though, she was boiling. Not with anger, with purpose. By July, Emily had dropped 20 pounds. She swapped soda for lemon water, late-night chips for grilled chicken. She didn't have much money. Alan had frozen most of their joint accounts, but she budgeted every dollar with care. She took night classes online, learning about wellness coaching, healthy eating, how to start a small business. She watched free videos, read every article she could, and wrote in a journal every single night. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about rebuilding something sacred, her values, her identity, her sense of worth. Each step forward was a rebellion against the version of herself that Alan had tried to bury. Her body started to change. Slowly. Her face thinned, her posture lifted. People began speaking to her differently, some with pity, others with curiosity. One even asked, "Are you doing one of those cleanse things?" Emily laughed. "Nope, I'm just working on my health. One step at a time." By October, she had lost 55 pounds. She could fit into jeans she hadn't worn since college. She bought a pair of bright red sneakers with the little money she'd saved. They made her feel like she could outrun her old life. And then, on a rainy Tuesday, she saw him again. Alan. He was at the diner on Main Street, sitting in a booth with Kelsey, holding her hand like he used to do with Emily. Her stomach turned, but she kept walking. He didn't even recognize her. That night, Emily didn't cry. She didn't binge, she didn't collapse. She smiled. Not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Alan had left her because he saw no value in her, no beauty, no prosperity. But she'd found those things within herself. Not because of him. Despite him. By the end of the year, she was 80 pounds lighter. Her skin glowed, her voice was steadier. She started volunteering at a local women's center, helping others who felt invisible and broken. One woman asked, "How did you start?" Emily answered simply, "I got tired of waiting for someone to save me, so I became the one who did." She began speaking at small events, coffee shops, libraries, even the YMCA. People were drawn to her, not because she was perfect, but because she was real, honest, brave. With each story she told, Emily reclaimed a part of her that had been lost. And people paid attention. She got her first sponsorship offer in February of 2007. A local health food store wanted to partner with her new blog, Wellness Over Shame. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was a start, a seed, a new path to build real prosperity, the kind built on strength, not size, on self-respect, not approval, and she wasn't done yet, not even close. By March of 2007, the snow in Manchester, New Hampshire had started to melt, leaving slushy puddles and bare sidewalks behind. Emily's daily walks were now power walks. She didn't just move, she marched, head up, shoulders back. She wore fitted hoodies, colorful leggings, and those same red sneakers that had now carried her through over 160 pounds of emotional weight. At this point, she had lost over 100 pounds and gained something far more valuable: confidence. People in town didn't look at her with pity anymore. They looked with curiosity, respect, some even with admiration. One woman at the post office pulled her aside and said, "Whatever you're doing, honey, don't stop. You're glowing." Emily smiled. "Thank you. I'm just focused on my health now, mind, body, and soul." But that glow wasn't just about weight. It came from something deeper. Her blog, Wellness Over Shame, had started picking up traffic. At first, it was just a few clicks a week. But by April, she was getting messages from women across the country. Ohio, Texas, even as far as California, sharing their own stories of heartbreak, shame, and healing. They didn't want tips on salads or sit-ups. They wanted to feel seen. They wanted someone who understood the pain of being overlooked because of size. The shame of walking into a room and knowing you were being silently judged. The grief of investing years into a relationship that only saw your value when you were smaller or gone. Emily gave them hope, but more than that, she gave them a roadmap. She spoke about more than weight loss. She talked about money, about rebuilding life from zero, about how she'd opened a separate bank account in her own name, and how, for the first time in her life, she was learning the power of financial independence. She wrote blog posts about prosperity, about setting values that had nothing to do with how others saw you and everything to do with how you saw yourself. One post went viral in May, titled, "They Took My Worth, So I Built It Myself." It was raw, honest, and powerful. Sponsors started reaching out: small wellness brands, fitness clothing lines, even a financial app company. The money wasn't massive, but it was enough to pay her rent and fund her dream: opening a community health space where women like her could come feel safe, strong, and respected. Emily found a small building near the center of town. Nothing fancy, just a brick storefront that used to be a bakery. She cleaned it herself, painted the walls soft green, added plants, mirrors, and folding chairs. By June, she opened the doors to her first wellness workshop. 6 women showed up that first night. They drank lemon tea, shared stories, cried, and laughed until almost midnight. One woman said, "Emily, this is the first place I felt like I belong." That was worth more than any paycheck. But not everyone was clapping. One morning, while putting up a sign outside the storefront, Emily saw a black SUV pull into the lot. The window rolled down. It was Alan. He looked different. Tired, hair thinner, eyes sunken. "Emily?" he said. She stood still, calm. "Dr. Thompson." He glanced at the building. "So, you really did all this?" "I did." He nodded, awkward. I heard you were doing good things." She didn't answer. Let the silence fill the space. He tried again. "I was wondering if maybe we could talk sometime." "About what?" "I don't know. Just catch up." Emily looked him in the eye, her voice steady. "Alan, I appreciate you stopping by, but the woman you left in the parking lot that day, she doesn't live here anymore." She turned and walked back inside. That moment wasn't revenge, it was closure. She didn't need to prove anything. She'd already won. Not through anger, not through payback, through progress, through purpose, through prosperity. And that was just the beginning. By late summer of 2007, the old bakery on Main Street had a new heartbeat. Emily's wellness space, she never called it a gym, was now a small haven for women from all walks of life. Some were single moms, some were divorcees, some were young, some retired. All of them carried stories on their backs heavier than any number on a scale, and Emily welcomed them with open arms. The front sign read, "Strength begins when shame ends." Inside, she led simple sessions, gentle movement, honest conversations, and warm cups of herbal tea. No weigh-ins, no mirrors, just a community of women rebuilding from the inside out. One night, after a circle talk about self-worth and money trauma, a woman named Jasmine, mid-40s, recently laid off, stayed behind. "Emily," she said, eyes brimming with tears, "how did you get here? I mean, how did you go from being left to being the one who owns the damn building?" Emily leaned back, smiled softly. "I stopped letting other people set my values. I started choosing my own. And once I did that, the money followed, the peace followed, the prosperity followed." That word, prosperity, hung in the air like a prayer. It wasn't about being rich. It was about finally feeling like she was enough. By September, Emily had lost 140 pounds. But more importantly, she had gained freedom. Financial freedom. Emotional freedom. The kind of wealth that can't be measured in dollars, but in clarity, boundaries, dignity. She had learned how to charge for her workshops without guilt. She learned how to say no without apologizing. And she started working with a mentor from Boston, a woman who helped her turn her story into a brand. It wasn't just about weight anymore. It was about impact, about legacy. And the local buzz was catching fire. A regional magazine ran a feature titled "From Forgotten Wife to Community Warrior, Emily Thompson's Journey." They called her clinic a place of healing. They called her story inspirational. But not everyone loved the spotlight. Alan's reputation had taken a quiet hit after their divorce. Whispers around town, patients switching clinics, judgment he wasn't used to facing. And now Emily wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Publicly. One afternoon, while Emily was restocking protein bars near the front desk, a familiar voice startled her. "Emily, we need to talk." She turned. Alan. He looked like someone who had lost something important and just realized it too late. "What is it?" she asked, cool but not cruel. I'm no longer working at Hanover Clinic." She blinked. "Oh." "They brought in a new partner. Younger, cheaper. I didn't see it coming." Emily nodded slowly. "Things change." He looked down. I was wondering if you might need some part-time help here. I can clean, organize, whatever." She stood there, stunned for a second. Not because of the offer, but because of how life works when your values finally align. "I'll think about it," she said. "Leave your number with Renee at the desk." When he left, the women in the room stared wide-eyed. Jasmine leaned over and whispered, "Girl, is that your ex-husband?" Emily just smiled. "Yeah, life's funny." That night, she lit a candle in the window of her tiny apartment above the studio and journaled for over 2 hours. Not about him, but about what she'd built. Her health, her stability, her independence, and the realization that real wealth isn't about being seen, it's about being known by yourself. She looked in the mirror, touched her collarbone, visible now, and whispered, "I am not who I used to be, and thank God for that." She had become her own provider, her own protector. And slowly, the girl who once stood abandoned in a parking lot was turning into a woman with power. Not revenge. Power. And that power was only growing. By the time October of 2007 rolled around, leaves covered the sidewalks in fiery shades of orange and red. Emily's studio, once a quiet little space, now buzzed with energy. Women gathered each evening for workshops, meditation nights, budgeting classes, even discussions on building wealth and long-term prosperity. Emily had turned her pain into purpose, and her story was beginning to reach beyond New Hampshire. One Tuesday morning, Renee, her assistant and close friend, walked into the office with a hesitant smile. "Hey, Em, you got a job application?" she said, handing over a neatly folded form. Emily raised an eyebrow. "We're not even hiring." Renee nodded. "I know. You should see the name." Emily unfolded it slowly. There it was. Alan Thompson. Under position desired, he had written in clear, almost shaky print, "Custodial, part-time, any hours available." Renee watched her boss closely. "What do you want to do?" Emily stared at the paper for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Let's bring him in." By Friday, Alan was sweeping the back room of the wellness center. He wore a faded blue work shirt and khaki pants, too loose for his shrinking frame. His posture was different now. Quieter, smaller, no clipboard, no stethoscope, just a broom and a bucket. He avoided eye contact for the first 2 weeks. He arrived early. He stayed late. He didn't ask for favors, didn't speak unless spoken to. Emily never treated him badly. No sarcasm, no smug looks. But she didn't coddle him either. One afternoon, while Emily was organizing some new wellness products, handmade teas, supplements, journals, a delivery driver asked her, "Hey, is that guy in the back your janitor?" She nodded. "Yes, his name's Alan." He chuckled. "He kinda looks familiar." Emily gave a soft smile. "He used to be somebody else." That weekend, during the monthly financial values workshop, Emily talked openly about redefining worth. "It's not about how much money you make," she said, looking around the circle. "It's about how much you believe you deserve. Because prosperity starts inside. It starts with your values." Alan was mopping the hallway just outside. He paused, listening. Later that night, he knocked gently on her office door. "Emily," he began, voice low, "I wanted to say thank you for letting me work here." She didn't look up from her laptop. "You're doing your job well." "I mean it," he added. "I've been thinking about everything, about what I said to you that day in the kitchen. I was cruel, selfish." She looked at him then, calm and composed. "You were." He swallowed hard. "I see it now. The way you carry yourself, what you've built, the lives you're changing, it's incredible." Emily nodded once. "It is, and I didn't build it for revenge, Alan. I built it because I was tired of surviving. I wanted to live, with dignity, with health, with actual wealth. Not just money in a bank, but real richness in life." He nodded slowly. "I envy you." Emily tilted her head. "You had everything, Alan. A respected job, a home, a wife who loved you." "I didn't have what mattered," he whispered. "Not really. I didn't know how to value it." The silence between them wasn't angry. It was heavy with truth. "You've changed," he said. Emily stood. She was lean now, strong, her presence quiet but commanding. "No, Alan. I just remembered who I was before you made me forget." As he turned to leave, she added softly, "Clean the back room before you go. We've got a class tomorrow." He nodded, eyes glassy. "Yes, ma'am." Emily sat back down, opened her spreadsheet, and smiled. The clinic was turning a profit. She was paying herself a real salary. She was saving, investing. She had wealth now, not just in dollars, but in peace. And she wasn't done building. Not yet. By November of 2007, the cold had fully settled into Manchester, New Hampshire. Snow began to coat the rooftops and line the edges of sidewalks like powdered sugar. Emily wore thick sweaters now, not to hide, but because she could finally feel the chill. Her body had changed, yes, but her life had shifted even more. The studio was now fully booked for 3 months out. Emily had hired 2 part-time coaches and a bookkeeper. What started as a survival mission had become a full-fledged business, with stability, prosperity, and a growing impact that stretched well beyond her town. One Wednesday afternoon, during a quiet break between classes, Emily sat in her office, sipping cinnamon tea, reviewing the numbers on her laptop. For the first time ever, she had savings. Real savings. Thousands of dollars in the bank. Her credit score had climbed. Her debts had been paid. She was investing now, into herself, into others, into her community. That day, Renee walked in holding a manila envelope. "Em, this came for you. Looks like some kind of offer?" Inside was a letter from a national wellness company. They had seen her viral posts. They wanted her to co-author a book, not a ghostwriter, not a side note. Her name on the cover, her voice, her story. Emily sat in silence for a long moment, eyes wide. "You okay?" Renee asked. Emily nodded slowly. I remember sitting in that tiny kitchen with a broken chair and nothing in the fridge. And now they want me to write a book?" "You earned this," Renee said. "You built all of it." Emily looked around her office. The soft green walls, the bookshelf stacked with journals, the framed photo of her first ever workshop, with 6 smiling women and 2 folding chairs. It hit her then. She had become the woman she used to pray for. Later that week, Alan knocked lightly on her office door. It was just after closing. He looked worn down, older than his years. His hands were dry, his face pale. "I wanted to say thank you again," he said, voice quiet. "For the job, for not throwing my past in my face." Emily looked up from her screen. "You're doing your work, that's all I ask." He nodded, stepping inside. "Can I ask you something?" She hesitated. "Go ahead." "Do you ever think about us? About what we had?" Emily closed her laptop slowly. "Of course I do. I gave you the best years of my life. I loved you, Alan. I supported you when you were nothing, and you left me on the coldest day of the year like I was disposable." He swallowed, eyes shining. "I regret it every day." "I believe you," she said. Silence lingered between them. Outside, snowflakes floated past the window like quiet ghosts. "I want you to know," he added, "you've become someone extraordinary, and I don't mean just physically. I mean your strength, your presence, your ability to lead. It's powerful." Emily stood up, walked toward the window, and looked out over the town where she was born. "I didn't become someone new, Alan. I just returned to who I was before the world tried to shrink me." She turned to him, her voice calm and sure. "You didn't break me. You just cleared the space for me to grow." Alan's mouth opened like he wanted to say more, but nothing came. She stepped forward and placed a small folded check in his hand. "For your work this month, you've been consistent." He looked down. "This is more than I expected." Emily shrugged. "It's fair. I believe in fair pay, in valuing people. You taught me what happens when you don't." He nodded, eyes full of something that looked like both shame and respect. As he left the office, Emily sat back down and exhaled deeply. Not because of him, but because she could finally feel the full weight of her peace. This wasn't revenge. This was redemption. Earned, lived, and far from over. By December of 2007, the town of Manchester felt like a snow globe. Quiet, cold, beautiful. Strings of white lights wrapped around street lamps downtown, and small businesses set out thermoses of free cocoa to warm the hands of tired shoppers. Emily Thompson walked down Main Street with a purpose. Her red coat fitted perfectly, her scarf a soft cream that framed her face. She had just come from signing her first book contract. The advance wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to upgrade her studio, expand her classes, and finally, pay off the last bit of credit card debt she'd been carrying since Alan walked out. The richness of that moment didn't come from the check in her purse. It came from knowing she had rebuilt her life without shortcuts, without pity, and without losing her soul. Back at the studio, a few of her core clients waited to rehearse for a year-end community event. Emily had organized a small stage production, part spoken word, part storytelling, where local women would share personal journeys about healing, health, and redefining success. As they set up folding chairs, Jasmine looked over and smiled. "You nervous?" Emily laughed. "Not at all. I've already lived the hard part. This is just the celebration." The event took place on Saturday, December 15th, inside a rented hall at the town library. Snowflakes drifted past the tall windows as 50 chairs filled with neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had read about Emily's work online. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. And when Emily stepped onto the stage, wearing a simple black dress and standing nearly 160 pounds lighter than she had been just 2 years before, she paused. She took it all in. Then she spoke. "2 years ago, I stood in a clinic parking lot, crying and alone. I weighed over 360 pounds, and the man I loved left me without warning. Not just as a wife, but as a woman, as a human being." The room was silent, eyes wide, some already teary. "I was told I wasn't enough, not pretty enough, not healthy enough, not worthy enough. But I want you to hear me when I say this. Worth has nothing to do with weight. It has nothing to do with who chooses you or who walks away. Worth is built. It's claimed. It's protected." Applause broke through the stillness. Some stood. "And if no one's ever told you this before, let me be the first. You deserve wealth. You deserve health. You deserve peace and joy and real prosperity. The kind that can't be taken when someone decides you're not convenient anymore." From the back of the room, Alan watched in silence. He had come to help with setup that morning, stacked chairs, swept the floors, but now he stood behind the crowd, arms crossed, eyes locked on the woman who had once begged him not to leave. She didn't mention him by name. She didn't need to. Her victory was speaking loud enough. After the final round of applause, people surrounded her. Some hugged her, some thanked her. One woman held her hand and said, "You changed my life without even knowing it." Emily smiled. "You changed your own life. I just reminded you it was possible." That night, back at the studio, Alan waited by the door as she returned to lock up. "You were amazing up there," he said quietly. She nodded. "Thank you." "I don't know if this means anything," he added, "but I'm proud of you." Emily studied his face. "I'm proud of me too." He shifted, unsure. "Do you ever miss it? What we had?" She thought for a moment. "I miss who I was before I shrank myself to fit you." He looked down. "That's fair." "You taught me something important, Alan," she added, "that losing everything can sometimes be the very thing that sets you free." They stood in silence under the studio's porch light. Snow began to fall again, soft and steady. "I should go," he said. She opened the door behind her. "Take care." As he walked off into the night, Emily turned off the lights, locked the door, and stood still for a moment. Not broken, not bitter, just whole. And finally, undeniably enough, the first sunrise of January 1st, 2008, broke through the clouds over Manchester with a golden calm. The streets were still quiet from the night before, icy sidewalks untouched, the town still sleeping off fireworks and champagne. Emily Thompson was already awake. She stood in front of the mirror in her modest apartment above the studio, wearing a soft white sweater and jeans that hugged her in all the right places. Her scale read 197 pounds. But she hadn't stepped on it to chase a number. She stepped on it to remember where she began, to remember who she used to be, alone, ashamed, invisible, and how far she'd come since the world told her she wasn't enough. Her book was set to release in March. Her wellness studio now had a wait list, and more importantly, her heart had healed in ways she never thought possible. That morning, as she walked to the cafe down the block, she passed the corner of Hanover and Pine. The same spot Alan used to park when picking her up after appointments. The same street where she once stood alone in the cold, waiting for a man who never came back. But now she wasn't waiting on anyone. She walked into Maple and Oak Cafe, a local favorite. The smell of roasted beans and cinnamon filled the air. A couple women in line noticed her and smiled. "That's her," one whispered. "That's the one who started that wellness place. She used to be married to that doctor. Can you believe how far she's come?" Emily didn't flinch. She just smiled and ordered her black coffee with almond milk, paid in cash, money she earned on her own terms, and sat by the window. She watched life move around her. People, snow, steam rising from cups, and then, through the glass, she saw him. Alan, pushing a sidewalk shovel in front of a neighboring shop, wearing a maintenance uniform, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. He hadn't seen her. His posture was hunched, his pace slow. She watched him for a moment, and she didn't feel hate. She didn't feel vengeance. She felt nothing. Just peace. Emily pulled out her journal from her bag and opened to a fresh page. She titled it Abundance. She wrote down her goals for the year, not just about health or business, but about expanding, about giving back, about building generational wealth not just for herself, but for women who had been dismissed, overlooked, discarded. She wanted to teach more than wellness. She wanted to teach values, resilience, ownership, prosperity that didn't depend on appearance or approval, but on choice, on self-respect, on inner alignment. Later that afternoon, she returned to the studio for the first session of the year. 24 women were signed up, some familiar, some new, some still heavy with shame, others already walking lighter. Emily stood at the front of the room. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to say something simple. You are not too far gone. You are not too broken. You are not behind." She paused. "You are exactly where you need to be, and from this point forward we move with power, with dignity, and we rise." The women clapped. Some cried. Every single one of them felt it. And Emily? She didn't need anyone's permission to lead anymore. She had earned it, from the ground up, from heartbreak to health, from silence to wealth, from shame to real strength. Her story didn't end with revenge. It ended with her standing in the light, stronger, freer, and more whole than she had ever been. And if you're listening to this right now, and you've ever been made to feel small, forgotten, or less than, I want you to remember, sometimes the person they leave behind becomes the one they can never catch up to. And you too can rise. And you too can win. And you too can rebuild it all. Because you were always more than enough. Now go live like it. And you, have you ever lived something like this? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your story.